Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alpstead, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alpstead, here with Keith Myers. Keith, 5-0.
5-0, the first time in franchise history that this team has been 5-0, which is kind of funny because when they went 4-0 and then of course 4-1 in 2013, and we knew that team was really, really good and destined for greatness, and they went on to win the Super Bowl that year. This year, though, they're 5-0, and we know the offense is really, really good.
I think the defense is better than we might think it is.
Really? Because statistically, they're the worst defense in the history of the NFL through 5 years.
I know. It's
and
crazy.
not even by a small amount. Like, they are significantly worse than the second worst team in NFL history.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about everything. I mean, this is the bye week. We've got extra time. Who cares if we run over a little bit today? You know, we don't have a game coming up this weekend, so we're going to get you all caught up with the year so far. How did we get to 5-0? What's going on this week? What are the Seahawks up to get ready for a game against the Arizona Cardinals in a week and a half or so? And then we're going to try to transition into where are we at for the rest of the year. We'll look at the schedule. We'll look at the players coming back that have been injured or out of the system for a little while. And we'll cover darn near everything in between probably. So let's have fun. Yeah. That's the first order of business. So 5-0, Keith, like you said, first time in franchise history, unreal. It's crazy how we've kind of gotten to 5-0. You mentioned 2013 is kind of like the pinnacle of Seahawks existence, which is absolutely the truth. But somehow or another, we even beat that franchise because they didn't go 5-0.
Yeah, they went 4-1. That franchise, I mean, you think back to that year, that Seahawks defense is one of the most dominant defenses in the history of the NFL. The offense was good. I mean, it was conservative. It was
solid, yeah.
In terms of its play calling and stuff, because they knew the defense was that good, and they didn't want, turnovers and stuff to screw it up. But, that team dominated its way through the year, and
really
the only
that's revisionist.
Team,
come on.
No, it really isn't. The only team
we struggled on a few games in that schedule, though.
Sure.
I mean, Tampa Bay was leading us at halftime, like by some ridiculous score.
You're right.
Earlier in the year, and the Houston game
didn't show up, but they still came out after halftime and outscored the team by 28 points in the second half to come back and win. I mean, that's a dominant performance.
Well, you're right
only the second half.
You're right in the fact that we basically were the DVOA kings for the better part of 2 or 3 seasons there, where we were number one overall, but number one on defense for sure. But our offense was great, good enough,
and they were significantly better than everyone else except for San Francisco, who was also great at the time. The Seahawks were just better, and really there was no other challenger in the NFL. There was no other team that was going to challenge Seattle or San Francisco for the Super Bowl title that year. And this year, this is a team that is 5-0. They're even better than that 2013 team as far as record. But have they been dominant at any point? Maybe Atlanta.
Yeah, well, we've certainly given up tons of points and tons of yards, right? Mm-hmm. But DVOA kind of likes us, even on defense. So overall, we're ranked third in DVOA. We're third on offense. We're 18th on defense. We're fourth on special teams. So you would think that maybe we'd be 28th, given the fact that it's painted as being really out of whack. But when you take a look at the advanced stats, we're 18th, which is maybe a little better than I thought. And you compare that to the most difficult team that we have, the remaining is the Los Angeles Rams, believe it or not, a team that we completely discounted at the beginning of the year before the season started as a team that was on the downslide and would finish dead last in our own division. Looks maybe a little bit stronger than we thought they were. They're 4th overall in DVOA. We play them twice. 4th on offense, right behind us. 8th on defense, and 29th and on special teams. So statistically, they are very evenly matched with us, surprisingly. Other notable teams just on DVOA, and we'll leave that alone. We just played Minnesota. They're ranked 11th overall.
Despite being 1-4.
Despite being 1-4. That was a darn good 1-4 team I thought we faced. I thought they had an excellent game plan against us, and we'll talk about all of that. But I just thought it was a great game plan. 13th, Miami is 13th. Carolina 14th. Buffalo, a team. I did notables. These are the teams that the Seahawks are going to play. Buffalo at 15. Dallas, we had already played at 16. Arizona 18. San Francisco 19. New England 20. Atlanta 25, and then Washington, New York, Philadelphia, and New York Jets 28, 29, 30, and 32 respectively.
Did you have Green Bay?
No, I didn't actually. I think they're number 1 overall in DVOA.
Because they're the other 5-0 team. They're the team that the bandwagon's growing in terms of national media. Right. And everyone's hopping on the Green Bay bandwagon.
But we don't have to play those guys until
playoffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we get that far.
I can understand why they would jump on the Green Bay bandwagon and not Seattle, given Seattle's defensive struggles. Whereas Green Bay has been just as good offensively, but their defense hasn't been nearly as terrible. So I can kind of get behind that move. But overall,
Pro Football Focus has the Vikings offense ranked 5th overall, which if you take that in consideration a little bit against our defense, maybe it makes things a little better. Seattle's ranked number 1 overall. Green Bay ranked number 2. Browns 3. Los Angeles Rams 4. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so much to talk about. It's interesting. I just what I wanted to do is kind of wanted to first figure out how we got where we're at, because I just thought it's interesting. It's like you when you're 5-0, you kind of gloss over some of the stuff, and we really kind of squeaked out a few games. We did have the convincing win in Atlanta, but that last play defensive stop against Cam Newton on 4th and 1 with New England, and week 3 win versus Dallas ended on a Ryan Neal interception in the end zone to preserve that win. Week 4, we forced 5 field goals against Miami, possibly a better team than given credit for. And just one of those, if they converted a touchdown, we would have lost that game. Mm-hmm. And then the Vikings game, stopping them on the 4-yard line on 4th and basically at inches, half a yard, and driving 96 yards in under 2 minutes to score and win while converting the 2 4th down plays. I mean, that's how we got to 5-0. It's just, and I was thinking about that 2013 team, and you mentioned them earlier, how we kind of dominated through there, but they squeaked out a few wins early in that season as well before they got really in sync and dominant, in the second half of that year. And there's still time for Seattle to kind of put the defense together a little bit. And I think, and we'll end the podcast with some of the expected players that we have coming back, and we may end up having some reinforcements there on the defensive side that may give us, a little bit better of a chance.
Yep, there's some help coming. And we'll tease the final segment with that. There is some help coming, some significant help on the way, and so we'll look at that later in the show. But let's finish diving into this Minnesota game, because there's some really interesting things here. Like the Seahawks offense has been hot this year. They've been dominant, one of the better offenses in the entire league. And they did nothing whatsoever in the first half of this game.
Oh, that was hard to watch.
And some of it was that the defense couldn't get off the field.
That was hard to watch. I mean, we had 3 drives, Keith, in the first half.
Yeah. And, it's hard to get in any kind of rhythm, to get any kind of, you think about the way Russell Wilson plays and he makes so many plays where he's extending the play and those things. And that the energy level that you see from him gets stronger as the game goes on, or the more that he's out there on the field. And when teams can keep the ball out of his hands.
Yes.
And
that was the key to this
stay
game.
on there. He does have a harder time getting going. And it just was a struggle for the entire offense during the first half because the defense could not get off the field.
At some point, you have to give Minnesota credit and Mike Zimmerman come in with a really good game plan, and they executed it really well. In fact, at the end of the game, they led the possession, time of possession stats almost double. They had 31 first downs to our 18. Third down conversions. We actually did pretty decent on defense, held them to 6 of 14. But some of those were at very key moments. Ours were 0 for 7. Our offense was the number 1 offense in the NFL by almost any measure, or top 2 or 3. 0 for 7 on third down conversions. We definitely need to work on that. But we did convert 2 of 2.
That hasn't been a major issue.
But we are ranked 28th overall on third down conversions. On the year, yeah.
But how much of that was going 0 for 7 in this game?
Yeah, we're ranked 31st after 5 games.
Yeah. So,
that's something that definitely we can work on. And quite frankly, that's a solvable problem if you really think about it, because Seattle is so successful on all sorts of other plays and downs and so forth. I don't think that's a huge ongoing issue. But in total yards, they had 449. We had 314. Total plays, they had 83 plays on their offense. We had 52. And we won the game. And we won the game, Keith.
But we won the game because of winning the turnover margin. So they got an extra drive. They won the game because
that's huge.
They forced field goals instead of giving up touchdowns, which kept the game.
And they forced that fourth.
Yep.
Down situation.
Minnesota
had a 96.9 win probability at that moment, and they made that choice. I mean, if you think about it, Keith, here's the deal. They're fourth down on the 5-yard line, and by going for it, they created the only scenario in which Seattle could win in regulation. And then they did. Seattle had a win probability at that moment of 3.1%. And they chose to go for it. And by choosing that and not getting it, they gave Seattle the opening, and they took it and won.
True. But if
they would have kicked the field goal, they would have been up by 8 and forced Seattle to drive just like they did and convert 2-point conversion.
True, but you're also not
just to tie in regulation.
You're not forcing them to drive 90.
And you would have forced them to get the coin toss and drive down again to win. I mean, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing being a coach in that situation, because everything in your body, everything the confidence that you would have in your own offense to be successful on that play, given Seattle's struggles all year trying to make those kinds of stops,
and in that game,
you would go for it. You would. I would.
I would have.
But you have consequences if you don't get it.
I thought going for it was the right call, because it was, if you don't get it, you're giving the ball to the Seahawks on the 6-yard line. If you kick the field goal, go up 8, now you're kicking the ball off. And worst case scenario for Seattle is you have to go 75 yards for the score. Best case scenario is you get a big return, and now you don't have to go as far. You're creating a situation where the drive is yes, you have to get 8 instead of giving it a chance. But
everything that the drive is right.
Easy. But the drive is easier.
But everything you're saying is right. I mean, Mike Zimmerman is you right now. You've talked yourself into it. But you're facing Russell Wilson. That's the difference. You're giving the ball back to Russell Wilson, 94 yards,
Seattle's
one timeout
that
with less than 2 minutes.
201 yards on the ground. And you can't get 1 yard.
Seattle is known to come up with big plays now and again on defense. They did it against Cam Newton. They did it against Dallas and Dak Prescott with the interception. They make big plays at big moments.
You have been eating the defense alive. You get the first down, you take a knee, the game's over. The Seahawks have done that in the past when it was, with Marshawn Lynch. You go for it, you get the first down, and you put them away. Kicking a field goal puts the ball back in the other team's hands, and now you're playing defense, and now you're just put them away. Run the ball, get the first down. The game is over. Take a knee.
That sounds like us in the Super Bowl against New England. So you have to give Seattle credit, though. They are a very entertaining team. I mean, anytime you can flip a script to go from a 3.1% win probability and convert on 2 4th downs to win a ball game, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I mean,
can we stop for a moment and recognize the growth of DK Metcalf?
Oh man, I wrote an entire page of notes just on DK Metcalf.
Season.
Yeah, 20 catches so far, 496 yards, a bunch of touchdowns against Minnesota, 6 receptions, 93 yards, 2 TDs. That seems like it's going to be his normal stat line for every game.
4th down conversions.
Yeah.
When the game was on the line, when the team needed it most, Russell Wilson went to DK Metcalf both times.
Superstar DK Metcalf.
Not Tyler Lockett, who's been one of the best, most efficient receivers in the NFL for the last 3 years. Now, he went to Metcalf in both of the situations. To me, that says a lot.
So far, the only wide receiver better statistically than DK Metcalf through the first 21st career games is Randy Moss. And we had this, I don't know if you remember this, but we had this conversation last year about DK Metcalf and rookies and trying to tamp down our expectations. And
because
Randy Moss had
never
this,
live up to their
Randy Moss had this outlier statistical rookie season that was like 30-40% more productive than any other rookie season in NFL history. That's Randy Moss. Now he's on this kind of the same page as Randy Moss. So check this out. Randy Moss has 90 catches for 1,678 yards, 20 touchdowns. That's in his first 21 games. Okay. That's an amazing stat. I mean, that's just unreal, crazy. Right? Metcalf has 80 catches, 10 less. He's also had 10 drops. Easy, right? 1,396 yards. So less than 300 yards difference and 12 touchdowns. So not quite as productive, but nonetheless, that is a very, very amazing pointed stat line considering the others in that conversation. Terrell Owens, 47 catches, 734 yards, 6 touchdowns. Calvin Johnson, 71 catches, 1,133 yards, 7 TDs. Julio Jones, 80 catches, 1,272 yards, 12 TDs. So he's statistically almost tied with Julio Jones. He beats Calvin Johnson, Terrell Owens. Those are the receivers now that are in the box that DK Metcalf is being compared to.
And I think it's fitting because all of the ones that you mentioned are big receivers. Mm-hmm. They're dominant physically, and it's part of what made them unstoppable and amazing. And that's who DK Metcalf is. During the broadcast of this game, they kept saying something about Jerry Rice. Yeah. And I say Jerry Moss, Jerry Rice. And honestly, that's not a good comparison. And the reason that
they did, and I'm going to tell you why they did that. Russell Wilson came out in an interview with who's the Collinsworth. Came out in an pregame interview with Collinsworth, and compared himself and DK Metcalf to what was the San Francisco quarterback?
Joe Montana.
He compared himself to Joe Montana and Jerry Rice to DK Metcalf and said that that's what I want to have for us. I want the Joe Montana, Jerry Rice.
And so I
connection.
get that.
And that's why Collinsworth was talking about that.
True. And I get that. I get that combination and that. So but to continuously bring it up, but I'm like, he is a very different kind of receiver than Jerry Rice was. Jerry Rice was the best high volume, short space receiver in the history of the NFL.
Not a lot of people know this, but Jerry Rice ran a 4.6 40.
He was not
a fast guy.
No, but he was uncoverable in the short space. Absolutely uncoverable. It's very similar to people will think more recently with a guy like Wes Welker or
it's like Steve Largent.
Steve, I was saying that was my next thing is in Steve Largent in Seahawks history is these guys are absolutely uncoverable in the short space, but they were
premier route runners.
Yeah, premier route runners, incredible hands, incredible balance, just certain things,
big play,
uncoverable guys, and that's who those guys are, and that is different than Randy Moss and DK Metcalf and Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, who are significantly bigger, significantly faster, but not as good in this short little tiny space. Their strength lies in their size and their speed and their ability to just physically dominate guys. And that is that's why I think Julio and Randy Moss are the better comparisons. And statistically, he's right there with both of them.
Yes.
And that is...
And he has Russell Wilson as his quarterback.
Well, if you think about Randy Moss had... oh my God, I can picture his face. Man, he was never the same after his knee injury either.
Culpepper?
Yes, Dante Culpepper, who until he got hurt was an absolutely dominant player. I mean, his ability to shake off sacks and extend plays and had a great deep ball, was just a phenomenal passer until he blew out his knee, and then he lost all of that and never really had a good enough pocket presence to continue to be a dominant player.
Then Brett Favre came for a couple of years, and then he moved on. Randy Moss moved on to New England for a year or two, right?
He moved on to Oakland for like 3 years in the middle there and did nothing. Absolutely was wasted years of his career. And then moved on to New England, and it was great for 2. People forget about the Oakland part because he just didn't really do anything.
Forgot about that. So getting back to DK Metcalf, John Boyle from Seahawks.com came up with a quote from DK, and DK said after the game, "They always told me how big and strong and physical and intimidating I look. So why not just act like it?" Amen, brother.
Dude, I love that.
I know.
Because he is big and strong and intimidating. And then when he acts like it and he plays physical and strong, which he has his whole career in Seattle. But I mean, just there's one thing to have those gifts and not use them, right? That was Chris Matthews, the really tall guy who had an incredible Super Bowl against New England in that first half, and after doing nothing all year, was suddenly really good in the Super Bowl and then disappeared afterward. Mm-hmm. He was a guy with all of the big and strong and physical characteristics and just refused to use them. And that was why he didn't play much and why he didn't do much in the NFL other than that one game.
Well, DK Metcalf's just a big play monster. I mean, it's crazy. So before the last drive, he had a fairly pedestrian game. One touchdown, a few receptions and a few yards. And then that last drive, Russell Wilson threw that 4th down conversion, from the 20-yard line that got them past the 50. I think it was a 40-yard completion or something
God, that
like
was
that.
a beautiful pass and catch.
Beautiful pass. I mean, it was short on purpose, and DK came back and perfectly timed his jump to come up and get that thing. That was crazy. I thought for a second there that DK would figure out a way to like smush that guy down with a stiff arm and bolt all the way down, but that was still awesome. DK is averaging 22.5 yards per reception in 2020, Keith.
Which is
Tops
insane.
in the NFL.
That's insane. Like
that's a big play.
Yeah, I mean, every reception is a big play.
He's got only 22 or 24 receptions this year, but he's leads the NFL in yardage, or second. It's nuts.
Yeah.
All right.
His play has just been crazy. And honestly, the last couple of weeks, Lockett's just kind of disappeared. And I find that to be weird because Lockett was so good for so long. The last 2 years and then the first couple of weeks of this season, he was a dominant player. And then he's kind of disappeared since then. The only other time in Lockett's career that he's disappeared like that, he was hurt. He was playing on a sore knee and was really struggling to make cuts. It really makes me wonder if Lockett's, got a little bit of an unknown, unreported injury because he's never gone 3 games like this where he's been kind of a non-factor.
I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to show up and he's going to have impact in games. So we'll see. But they're spreading the ball around. It's interesting.
I know Swain's getting targets. The running backs are getting targets. They've got 2 tight ends that are both right. really productive now.
It's a tough problem to have.
Oh yeah, it's such a tough problem.
Russell Wilson, 34th fourth quarter comeback, 30th game-winning drive. Russell Wilson after the game said, "I felt like Sue Bird in the clutch." I love that quote, dude. I love that.
Well, and then part of that though is that they had that thing. Was it a pregame or was it? It was like maybe I think
where he walked in with the shirt with the jersey.
Where she was talking and she was describing him in the clutch, and they had I want to say it was like maybe coming back from the first commercial break or something. They were talking and it had her like narrating. There was clips of him, and she was talking about how clutch, he is, and all of that kind of stuff. And I tweeted at the moment, I'm like, was she talking about Russell or herself? Because you want to talk about clutch, right? And then, and then he comes after the game and is like, yeah, he felt like Stu Bird. And I'm like, okay, this is almost choreographed because they have her do that thing, and then he brings it up.
In all my years of watching and playing sports, that's the first time I've heard of a pro athlete complimenting and comparing himself, a male athlete comparing himself to a female athlete. And I thought that was, pretty powerful, really. If you break it just down to the simple statement, I felt like Sue Bird in the clutch. I mean, I get the fact that maybe it was somewhat coordinated or whatever. Nonetheless, I think that's pretty cool to have that recognition and go beyond yourself and your own ego in that moment where you're on top of the world and you're giving credit to somebody else. I think that's pretty cool.
Well, and that's part of Russell. And then the other part of that is the Storm just won the WNBA title within the last week.
Congratulations.
And she's no longer the number 1 player on the team. They've got some younger players, and she's in her 17th year.
My goodness.
I know, isn't that crazy? But because they were comparing, because her and LeBron both won their 4th title this year and both in their 17th year, which I was like, wow, that's crazy. But so she's no longer like the superstar, but she's still the star. She is one of the few transcendent players from the WNBA that other people who, even though if they don't follow women's basketball, they still know who she is. And I just thought it was a cool moment. It was like one of those very inclusive moments where,
Well, and Dick Fane came on the radio and compared Russell Wilson's clutch crunch time confidence to that of Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. And I have to say, it is comparable. I mean, this guy really does rise to the occasion on a consistent basis. Now, there are some misses along the way.
He is at his best when the stage is at its biggest.
So what did you think of Minnesota's game plan coming into this game, Keith, just as an overall premise of how they were taking the ball away from Russell Wilson and making their defense work hard?
As a coach, I love it. As a Seahawks fan, I hate it because it worked.
Yeah. That first half was great, and we were stubborn, as sometimes shoddy can be. It's sticking to a scripted game plan, and they needed to move away from that immediately and stop.
I like what they did defensively in that they kept both their safeties back.
No, Seahawks defensively fine.
Yeah,
and Minnesota's got a good offense, and their running back is
Dalvin Cook is good, and their backup Madison is phenomenal. In fact, Madison could very well supplant Cook as the lead back there over the course of this year and next year. I mean, he's also, the two of them are, to me, are probably the best 1-2 punch at running back in the league.
Yeah, that's why I didn't feel so bad about this game. I mean, giving up 200 yards to those guys, nobody wants to do that. I get it, but they really pressed it. I mean, they ran the ball 40 some odd times out of their 80 plays.
41.
And it was brutal. And congrats to them. They've got a great line. They pushed us off the ball a lot. You saw Cody Barton have 13 or 14 tackles in this game, but all of them were like 7 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and he was falling backwards tackling. So Cody Barton's stats look great, but if you watched him on tape, that's why you saw a completely different kind of game, because
he had 14 tackles, which led the team, tied with Bobby Wagner, and 9 of them were solo tackles. So it's not like he was, getting there after someone else. There was a couple plays early on where he just, like one play, he just bounced off a running back and didn't make the tackle, and then that was pretty bad. And then another one where
a few times.
he just got washed out. He got lost in traffic in the middle and couldn't come up and make a play. And so there was a lot of like doubts, and they were like, who is this guy? Like, why is he really the guy we thought he was coming into the year? And then after the first, like couple of drives that Minnesota had, he stepped up and played significantly better.
I thought he played better in the third and fourth quarter, especially.
Even in the second
obviously
quarter.
That fourth quarter hit to blow up the lead block on that 4th and inches play on at Minnesota's goal line there. You wouldn't have had a successful play without him blowing that up.
Absolutely stuffed the fullback in the hole, created where there was no room to run, and so the play had to
it allowed whoever came in underneath to make
KJ.
that play. Yeah.
Yep. And so he just absolutely filled the hole, stuffed the fullback, and forced the run back to cut back into the other two guys who made the play. And it's just great, phenomenal team effort play by Cody Barton.
Let's talk about other standout guys. Well, obviously for me, the biggest standout player for me overall, maybe not in just this game, but so far in the year, is KJ Wright.
So KJ Wright actually had a couple of really rough games, the first couple of games. And then with the Bruce Irvin injury, he moved from weak side linebacker to strong side linebacker, which is what he's played his first year in the league. And they did that to help the rookie
Jordan Brooks,
because he's more natural over there. And they're like, okay, let's simplify it for him and let him, he's going to probably be in that role long term anyway. And since he's moved over to the other side, KJ's been playing some of the best football of his career, and I don't want to understate the fact that this has been a guy who's been phenomenal for the Seahawks for a very long time.
He's the Pro Football Focus highest rated defensive player, not named Jonathan Bullard, who we just acquired, with an 85.3 rating. Bobby Wagner's got 81.0, just to give you an idea.
Yeah. And so, KJ's been phenomenal the last 3 weeks. Just outstanding. And I was reading, there's a piece on, the My Northwest by Jim Moore. And he was talking about how Was it him? No, it was by Jake Heaps, the former quarterback, but also on My Northwest. Talking about how, the issues that KJ has with his, with the speed and stuff, now that he's got this knee that is troublesome for him. He's a better fit athletically on the strong side than on the weak side. And so moving over, he's always been a great player. He's been one of the most instinctual players ever, which is why he's, honestly, I don't know if I've ever seen a linebacker better at reading a screen and making a play than KJ Wright. And so you take all of the intangible aspects of him and you put him in a situation where he doesn't have to cover as much space. And,
I was just going to say play in open space.
Where he still has to play in space. I mean, look at his interception in this game.
He drops back in coverage, but he's more closer to the line of scrimmage where he can react.
It's a lot less space that he has to coverage. It's and more of just using his instincts, using his skills, and it's not as pressing on his athleticism. He's never been the fastest guy at linebacker. It never mattered. He was just that good. But he's lost another step because of his knee, and moving him over to the strong side has basically hidden that weakness and allowed all of his strengths to come back forward like they had earlier in his career. And he has been just great for Seattle. Just absolutely great.
Yeah, he's been great. Yeah, Shaquem Griffin has been doing well. There's some spotty play. And then all of a sudden you look at him overall and he's got a decent grade from Pro Football Focus. His coverage has been decent. He has allowed some things this year, but I thought he's really been better especially the last couple games. On the offensive side, Russell Wilson, obviously 94.6 overall Pro Football Focus grade. Dwayne Brown's been playing good, solid. Chris Carson's had a good solid year. Metcalf, we already mentioned. Damian Lewis, rookie, offensive right guard for the Seahawks, is playing really well. In fact, he's one of the best run blockers already in the NFL.
Which we knew, and that was why he was drafted. That's why he came in. The question with Lewis was, could he hold his own against pass rushers? And you saw in the Atlanta game where Grady Jarrett just stole his lunch money. But then, that was also his first game as an NFL player with no preseason, right? Look at what he did after that. He really has become he's been very solid as a pass blocker and somewhat dominant as a run blocker. And I think I mentioned it last week that when this team needs a yard or they need 2 yards on third down to pick up a thing, if they're going to run the ball, they run right a lot more than they run left. And when you've got Mike Lupati on the other side, who's built his entire career under being a run blocker, and you're still running behind your rookie, that is a lot of faith and a lot of trust that the coaches are showing to their young player. And he's earned it. He's played really well.
And Brandon Shell there too. You can't go without saying anything about him. He's been a really good signing for the Seahawks this year.
And can we take a moment to discuss the growth of Ethan Posick now that he's in the starting lineup?
He's nearly flawless on his pass protections this year.
He really is.
He's one of the highest rated centers in all of, I was going to say college football, in all of the NFL in pass pro.
Yeah. He has been really, really good. And, the depth of the offensive line has also been helped because we've seen Jones and we've seen a lot of Jordan Simmons at both of those guys at guard, and they have both played well too.
Yeah. We've had some great play. Our offense has been stellar. Defense has been spotty, but there's been some individual contributions there that have been really good. Jonathan Bullard, who we just signed off Arizona's practice squad, had a really good, solid game. Played 23 snaps, was highly rated on Pro Football Focus, had an over 87 grade overall, and over 90, I think it was 92.3 or something. Pro Football Focus rated him on like 10 pass rushing snaps. So there could be an interesting promise there of having a 5-tech that can actually get a little bit of penetration for the Seahawks.
When he signed, I actually didn't expect him to do much At least at first. I figured it would be one of those things that they were able to bring on a little slower. But he came in and played pretty well. But really, I mean, to me, when they signed him, it made me very concerned that maybe Rasheem Green isn't recovering and isn't coming back, because we know Collier has been better than expected. And he hasn't been great, but he's been better than expected. And for them to go get another 5-tech while they wait for Rasheem Green, I thought that was interesting, because what do you do?
But it sounds like Green's supposed to be ready here, after the bye. So
I know. I have that on my notes for our last segment, but it made me wonder, like, why? What are you going to do with 3 5-techs?
Unless one of them can play 3-tech full time,
and none of them can play 3-tech full time.
Well, Collier could probably do it.
Yeah, maybe. I like what I'm seeing out of Collier. I mean, he's not a great pass rusher. He's never going to be. That's not who he is. But he has been very solid as a run defender. He's been he does his job well. And like I said, he's not flashy. He's not spectacular. But there was a lot of concern that he was going to be just a complete washout after last year, because he was just invisible when he was on the field. And he's made an impact this year, and a positive one. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. It'll be interesting when you've got 3 5-techs, what they do with that.
So you and I were going to talk just a little bit about the defense before we get to that last segment. Points allowed versus record against the Giants. 133 points allowed. Giants have an 0-5 record. Seahawks, 135 points allowed, 5-0 record. Texas, 140 points allowed, 1-4 record. The equalizer is Russell Wilson. It's just crazy, but that's the difference basically. I mean, we might have some better players around, here and there, but
you also have to. I mean, you can't just say that one. I mean, the Giants, one I'll give you, but you give me, the quarterback in Houston. Why do I have so many problems with names after we hit record?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now too. But worst total yards per game allowed all time. 2020 Seattle Seahawks, 471.2. The next closest is the 2020 Atlanta Falcons at 446. I mean, we're on an all-time level here of ineptitude as far as yards and points allowed. But we're ranked 18th DVOA.
Well, true.
We're second in the league in turnovers. And strength of schedule is a little higher.
Second in the league in turnovers. The defense hasn't been good at stopping anyone, but they have been good at ending drives by taking the ball away.
So after those turnovers, the offense led by Russell Wilson has scored 8 touchdowns after those 10 takeaways, and the other 2 were victory kneel downs. So, I mean, takeaways, you give the ball back to Russell Wilson. That was what was so aggravating about the Minnesota game, was the fact that, their entire premise was to keep the ball away from Russell Wilson, and they did a fantastic job allowing Seattle to only have 3 opportunities in the first half. And then some mistakes were made, in that third quarter, and Seattle was able to score a quick 21. We didn't have to drive the field to do it.
The Seahawks scored 3 touchdowns in like a minute. What was it? A minute 52 or minute 54 or something like that. It was under 2 minutes. They scored 3 touchdowns. And that is the kind of thing that changes a game. And they went from having done nothing offensively and being down by 2 scores to suddenly being up by a score, and changing, completely changed the game. And
the turnovers are awesome, but Seattle needs to find a way to get off the field on defense and get Russ the ball more often. Now that can come via turnovers, but it also can come by limiting third down conversion
or just actually getting off the field.
Yeah,
the conventional
way. To allowing multiple long sustained drives per game. It doesn't seem like a sustainable solution for the Seahawks to go and win a Super Bowl. Now that it looks like we're on our way to being, to 12 or 13 wins. I mean, I think that's clear right now. But once we get to the playoffs, we're going to be facing some teams that look a lot like Minnesota. I mean, you look at Green Bay, they're going to be running the same shtick, in a potential NFC championship game, that, or maybe like the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know, but they have a very good offense and a decent defense this year. Seattle will struggle with teams like that, and we may not always end up on the positive side of, the equation. If we're going to allow 38, 40 minutes of possession and allow a team to have 9 or 10 drives to our, 6, that's not a great formula usually to win.
Yeah, I think that, what the Vikings just did was provide a roadmap for other teams. Run the ball, control the clock, keep the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands, and not let him get into a rhythm. Because once he gets into a rhythm, once he gets going, you're done. And so having that, if you can keep it, they just showed, if you can keep the ball out of Russell's hands and not let him get going, that he can struggle to get started over the course of the first half. And we're going to see more and more teams do that until Seattle can show that they can stop the run better, or that Russell can make the most of very limited opportunities and get points.
Oh, snacks, where are you? I mean, we need some Harrison. Maybe that will help.
He is on the practice squad, which I thought was weird when that happened. He
must be really out of shape, Keith. I mean, that would be the only thing that would explain that.
Yeah, he agreed to terms with Seattle. They placed him on the practice squad, but they're not paying. Make no mistake, they are not paying him practice squad money.
All right, so
or he would not have taken that.
Before we get to that segment, really quick, I just want to go over the two other teams I think are in the hunt with Seattle at this point in the season in the NFC. It's Green Bay and it's Los Angeles. Green Bay, they've beaten teams with a combined 5 wins. Vikings, Lions, Saints, Falcons. LA, they've beaten teams with a combined 4 wins so far. Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, Washington. They've had an easy schedule, except for the Cowboys. And then Seattle, we've beaten teams with 7 combined wins. Falcons, Patriots, Cowboys, Dolphins, Vikings. I think that even though some of those teams are struggling, the 2-2, 2-3 teams there, even the Vikings at 1-4, the Patriots, Cowboys, Vikings, and Dolphins are not bad teams. Those are teams that are decent teams that have chances to get to at least 500 ball this year, So that'll be interesting. Now, we've got a schedule coming up that's a little bit more challenging, at least in the immediate future, and then it smooths out at the end, and we can talk about that. But I just thought I'd mention that it seems like it's a 3-way battle right now to get a first round bye and get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got to get that bye, and it's harder now than ever to get that bye because you only
How
one
big
team
are those
gets
Rams
it.
games?
Yeah, those Rams games are going to be huge.
Yeah. It was always going to be the 49er games that were going to be huge. And now it looks like the 49er games aren't going to be as big. And it's the Rams games that are the games that we are going to need to take to get the NFC West and get a bye. But I think that the Rams might be artificially elevated, and we can talk about that a little bit. Maybe we can revisit that next week's show. Maybe we can do a kind of an NFC West roundup or something. So let's talk about, well, first, I wanted to talk about the prediction show, how that's going. I kind of wanted to revisit that. Keith, is that okay?
No, it's not okay.
5-0. So I didn't realize it when I predicted to start the season 5-0 that we as a franchise had never been 5-0. Like I literally predicted something that had never happened before, and it happened. So I just wanted to say, hey. Hey, we're 5-0. That's crazy. I thought yours was way more realistic when we actually did the show. And I was kind of a pipe dream because I really didn't honestly think that we could get to 5-0. But I thought there was a little bit of a chance, and it just worked out that way. I just had no idea though that we'd be so dominant on offense. I knew we'd have a better offense than last year, but it's next level, and Russell Wilson's having kind of one of those career years. So, but next up is the Cardinals after the bye week, and that's where we really have our next focus, and the Cardinals haven't been quite as good as advertised, which is interesting to me. I'm not sure what to make of that. But before we get there, we've got the bye week and then some players with the ability to come back and what impacts that might have. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about players and how they might integrate where they're at as far as being able to come back, if we should expect some of these guys or if we should expect them to stay on IR and continue to not be available. So Jamal Adams. It's interesting, Keith, because the Seahawks started the year with Jamal Adams and everybody was just super excited about Jamal Adams. And all of a sudden Jamal Adams went away with a groin pull, and we've still won without Jamal Adams, and I don't think anybody's really missed him per se.
They've missed him. They've missed him greatly.
So, well, let's talk about that. Like, what impact is Jamal Adams going to have? Healthy Jamal Adams coming back into this defense. Like, how is he going to fit now?
How is he going to fit? He's going to fit exactly the way Jamal Adams fits. He's like the best safety in the NFL right now, since Earl Thomas is currently unsigned. And I get that Ryan Neal's played well and they've changed the scheme to account for the fact that Adams isn't in there, and that the scheme changes meant fewer big plays, even though less, also with fewer big plays, but more medium gain plays. But I think you can go back to having Jamal Adams just be Jamal Adams and let him rush the passer and let him do the different things. And the thing is that what we may end up doing, since Ryan Neal has played so well, is you have all three of them on the field at the same time, and technically Jamal Adams is a weak side linebacker. You leave him as the nickel. But what you do is you have plays where Cody Barton comes off, Ryan Neal comes on, where Ryan Neal plays the strong safety, and Jamal Adams is actually the weak side linebacker on that play. And you let him you get creative and do stuff. But he is a freakish athlete who is just very, very good at football. You find ways to get him on the field and do stuff with him.
Speaking of Cody Barton, how about Jordan Brooks? So everyone's kind of talking about Cody Barton being kind of and I agree. He's kind of I mean, he's a great placeholder, but it turns out maybe Cody Barton's not the starting kind of quality linebacker we want on our defense, at least right now. Maybe he develops, maybe he needs a little bit more time, but Jordan Brooks didn't really have enough time to show anything before he got hurt. And so now maybe what do we have in Jordan Brooks? And does he have the ability to really add to this defense this year?
Oh, he does. He is super athletic compared to the other players that we're talking about. He's
fast.
He's fast. He's strong. He's agile. He's actually a really good pass rusher. This is a guy that will make an impact once he gets in there, and he's not. Cody Barton has not played in a way that is going to keep Jordan Brooks off the field. Brooks,
and now that KJ Wright has transitioned full time over to that strong side, Jordan Brooks can come in right away and play his one of his best positions at the weak side. Yeah,
and so they made that switch in order to make room for Jordan Brooks once Bruce Irvin got hurt, and it worked out great for KJ Wright. So why would he ever move back? And it also works out great for Jordan Brooks because he's going to be able to perform better there. It was just really unfortunate that he got out there after the Irvin injury and then instantly hurt his ankle. And
now he's had an additional 3 or 4 weeks to look at film, be out in practice, not full time, but just walkthroughs and all that kind of stuff. I think that'll help him understand his position so that he can act instinctively, because that will be his role. His role at weak side linebacker is to be an instinctive linebacker in open space, be able to drop back into coverage, be able to just cover a lot of ground and react, as opposed to be slow. He needs to be able to use his speed.
Yeah.
And I think that would have a tremendous impact on this defense. I really do. We need a little bit more team speed on defense. And Jamal Adams and Brooks bring that in spades.
Yep.
How about Carlos Hyde?
See, he's a guy that, man, I really thought he would make more of this opportunity because we know he's got talent. We've seen him, whether it be in Houston or San Francisco. The guy is Chris Carson 2.0 in terms of his play style and everything and his injury history. But he had the opportunity to really pick up some of the workload when Carson tweaked his knee against Dallas, and instead he hurt his shoulder and hasn't played since. They need him back because I think that they feel more they feel more confident with him in there than Travis Homer, and I think they want that. They're playing Homer too much and DJ Dallas not enough, in my opinion.
They really love Homer's ability to pick up the pass protection.
I know, he's actually done a really good job of that this year. His blitz pickup as a back has been really good, and I get that part, but he's so not a runner between the tackles. They just cannot get him going between the tackles. They've had a couple of good plays outside with him, but most of his runs have gone for no gain, and that's just unfortunate. He's been an okay kick returner, and I know that's why he's at the beginning of the year he was given the nod over Dallas, was because he had that special teams role. But I'd like to see them play Dallas more. But when Hyde comes back from the shoulder injury, he instantly slides back in the number 2 role. He eats up all of those snaps for other things, and they let Chris Carson do more catching the ball out of the backfield, which he's been surprisingly good at this year. So I think he can come in and really help the offense. Not that the offense needs a lot of help because it's been great, but it just provides balance.
That brings up a question. What about Rashad Penny? I don't know where he's at on his rehab. It sounds like he was ready almost at the beginning of the year. Gave him a little bit of extra time. Sounds like he's part of the equation. But where does he fit, if at all, this year?
It depends on where his knee's at. There's one thing. It's different between being healthy and ready to go and being 100%. You know what I mean? And they need him 100%. So they have the luxury right now of saying, yeah, we get it. You're ready. Let's go have you work out some more and continue to get stronger. Let's make sure this isn't a thing going forward.
Is there a drop dead date that we need to add him to the roster in order for him to come back this year?
Not for Penny.
So there's no contractual year accrued situation.
He has to play one game. Or actually, he has to be activated for one game. So for him, so
he could really come back if there was an injury. They could keep him off the active roster until we're almost to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting ability to have with him because we don't need him right now, but he could add an element of running that we currently are missing.
They just don't. They don't need to rush him back.
Is DJ Dallas Rashad Penny?
What do you mean?
Does DJ Dallas have the same physical attributes that Rashad Penny has? And could he give us 90% of Rashad Penny without risking Rashad Penny coming back?
They're different. They're different type of runners. DJ Dallas is more Chris Carson than Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny is more of a glider, and he's got that long speed that once he gets free, he can get the distance. Carson's not going to do that. He's going to be great.
So we've got 3 Chris Carsons on the roster, but we don't have a Rashad Penny.
Yeah. I mean, he does add something different. And we saw last year, right before the injury, how that difference can really...
Would you rather have Rashad Penny on the roster or Homer?
I'd rather have Rashad Penny on the roster.
What do you do about Homer's ability to pick up the blitz and stuff?
Well, from everything that we've been told, DJ Dallas can do that. And I'm just not a Homer fan compared to other people.
Either, but nonetheless, I always see people complain about Homer a little bit, and then I see those same people get admonished by other people who say that Homer should be looked at for his value on pass protection and not so much on his running ability or inability.
Well, true, but if you're,
Pete Carroll has him out there for a reason.
I know, and I do trust Pete Carroll in terms of that. I'm just saying, like, the Seahawks have 5 running backs. If you include Penny and the 4 that are on the roster, they have 5 running backs, and they all have a reason to be on the roster. I think it comes down to, if Penny is 100% and ready to go, I think the player that might be on the outside looking in might be Carlos Hyde, because he's redundant with Carson and Carson's skill set. Whereas, if Carson goes down,
could we trade Carlos Hyde for a edge rusher?
I don't know. I hope so.
So, how about Philip Dorsett? Here's another player that hasn't played it down for the Seahawks yet. Came in, was going to be the third down guy that was going to stretch the field, and here we are, and going to approach week 6, the bye, and we don't even know what we've got in Dorsett, and what snaps would he take?
Yeah. So, he's a guy that in camp the team loved him. He impressed, and just his speed. He's out there with Lockett and Metcalf.
Does Freddie Swain go to the practice squad?
No.
David Moore's not going to take less snaps.
He might take less snaps. He didn't play well in this last game. But Freddie Swain's been much better than advertised. So I don't think he would go anywhere.
Seems like Freddie Swain is Philip Dorsett minus a few tenths of a second on a 40.
Yeah, maybe. But I think you have other ways to make it happen. I don't know if he gets much playing time, because the offense is working without him.
The interesting thing, Keith, is that we're really healthy. Which is great as a franchise. So some of these guys that we're talking about have kind of been waiting in the wings, maybe for an injury even.
Yeah, and that's
to happen.
One of the things with Penny that we talked about is that, Carlos Hyde and Chris Carson both have long injury histories. Neither one of them makes it through a 16-game season.
And Carlos Hyde's already been out.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde's already been out, missed a couple of weeks. So we have a situation where that's part of the advantage of where they're at. So if Carlos Hyde's shoulder is really bad, maybe they stick him on IR, knowing that they can pull him back off in 3 or 4 weeks, and let Penny take that roster spot.
Or Dallas play more.
Mm-hmm.
How about Snacks Harrison? So we just picked up this dude named Snacks, and he's big. He's a big dude, and he takes on 2 blockers at the same time
and wins,
and allows other people around him to be playmakers.
Yeah, one of the best.
What is the advantage of Harrison coming on the roster?
Oh, he's one of the best run stuffing defensive tackles in a long time. He's just good up front. He's everything that Poona Ford is, but better. And you think, well, they need a pass.
That's true.
They need a pass rusher, but they get a run stuffer. True, but what that does is, and we saw kind of some of it early in this last game with Jerron Reed, is that was some vintage 2018 Jerron Reed we saw in the first half.
Jerron Reed played a really very good game.
He played a very good game. Now, if you free him up to do that during the game and not ask him to be a run stuffer, which is what they were able to do in 2018, is they let him be a pass rusher and let him be disruptive and not ask him to just eat blocks. He can do that job, and he can do that job and do it pretty well. And having Harrison in there, when he's ready, he's an upgrade on Poona Ford. And then Poona Ford takes all of those run stuffing snaps away from Reed, and it lets Reed only be the disruptive guy. And that's a great fit for his skill set. They're going to get way more out of Reed for it. The run defense will also get better. because Harrison's just really good. But they have to get Harrison on the field first. And that's the hard part.
Well, he showed up in bad shape, so we'll see what happens.
Well,
Usually Pete's pretty candid on that. True. But he knew he was going to come back, I think, in his own mind. He knew that he was probably going to come back. He would have Pete really kind of laid it in where he said, hey, listen, this guy's he needs to spend a little bit of time getting right with his body, and we'll see what happens. Now, if you go out on YouTube and you just look up Damian Harrison highlight reel, right? Man, dude, I'm telling you, this guy does not let anything get by him. Anything within an arm's reach is going down.
Yep.
By Harrison.
I mean, he was an all-pro for a reason.
And that was last year's highlights. I'm not talking about over the course of his career. I'm just talking last year. He's still able to play. He's a player. He hasn't lost a lot. He might be a little out of shape. It's going to take him 3 weeks to get kind of in game shape. I think this is a big, huge impact win for the Seahawks signing him because of who we play in the next 5 weeks. We got the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Bills, the Rams, and the Cardinals again. Teams that have the ability to move the ball on the ground. Teams that like to control the clock against the Seahawks, want to kind of enact that Minnesota thing. This kind of helps the Seahawks defeat that a little bit.
Absolutely. And
get off the field on third down and short and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a very impactful player. We talked about this team needing that veteran defensive tackle.
Yes.
And they've needed it all offseason. They never found one. They never got one. Brian Monet was in there. Rush is in there now. Neither of those guys are doing what the team really needs, a veteran defensive tackle.
You need a premier guy, and they got one.
And they went and got one. Yeah, and I get that he's not a pass rusher, and more than anything, they need a pass rusher, but he makes the pass rush better by...
Yeah, he makes the guys we have better.
Yeah, but he'll eat blocks and do things that will make sure that teams are in third and long more often. He will also keep Jerron Reed fresher so that Reed can come in and do what he did in this last game and be super disruptive on the inside and do that for more of the game. And so that makes the pass rush better. So he is a very impactful signing.
Staying along the defensive line, a couple of players. One that should be ready to go, and the other one, I just don't have any idea. And maybe you can help me with that. Rasheem Green, 5-tech. We just signed a guy the other day, Jonathan Bullard, off of Arizona's practice squad. He turned out to be a pretty decent get, at least in one game. Rasheem Green's coming back. Collier's been there holding down the fort, playing a few extra snaps, according to Pete Carroll, than he really wanted him to be playing. Rasheem Green was supposed to have a breakout year this year and just really never got started. What do you think about his impact and his ability to come back, or is he even ready to
go? He's supposed to be ready to go. I mean, I don't know, but he's supposed to be getting close. And we'll see. I still question, the Jonathan Bullard signing if Rasheem Green is ready to come back, because what are you going to do with 3 5-techs, right? There's really only snaps for 2 of them. And so I thought that was weird. And so my original thought was I'm like, okay, well, this is a guy who is, who's being brought in.
Well, and you have Jamontre Moore too, who's not been playing bad.
No, he hasn't been. Moore can also play on the other side of the line. But I'm just looking at this and I'm like, okay, what?
And Taylor, we'll talk about Taylor in a half second, but he's also, 279 pounds as well.
Yeah, but he's not.
And can play 5. Okay. All right.
But I just, you look at Bullard, and I mean, he came in with Chicago. He never really earned himself a starting job. He only had 2 sacks in 3 years.
He was a kind of a coveted guy we talked about entering the draft that year as a guy that Seattle might like to have as their 5-tech kind of player. And we passed on him, but,
and he never really, I mean, this is a guy with 13 quarterback hits now in 4+ years.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking when I thought about him and I thought about Collier, I thought about this almost a very similar player.
Yeah. And so I was just looking at that, and I'm like, I know that Collier has been playing more than the team wants. Not that Collier, he's been better than we thought he would, but it's just a matter of they like to rotate their defensive linemen more and keep them fresh and not ask them to play a ton of snaps. And they've been playing Collier a ton of snaps. And so I get, that might be with the Bullard signing. But if Rasheem Green is healthy and ready to come back, maybe that means Bullard, gets waived and they try and get him onto the practice squad. Or maybe they just, waive him and are okay with him leaving.
The other thing they can do too is they can start practicing Rasheem Green and wait 2 or 3 weeks.
Let him
see what happens.
Yeah, let him get up to speed fully. And then actually one of the things that happened today that intrigued me and it made me wonder if the Seahawks will do anything with is Jacksonville just cut
the defensive tackle?
Yeah, no, the defensive end. He's been with the Seahawks twice. Cassius Marsh. There we go.
Oh,
what is with me and names today? Cassius Marsh got cut today. As they, picked up a younger player off a different practice squad and went ahead and went with the cheaper younger guy because they're in full rebuild mode. And this is a guy that's familiar with the defense, familiar with Seattle, and maybe they bring him in to provide some pass rush help. He can play the strong side linebacker, and
I was just thinking that Bruce Irvin role.
Yeah, and he's Bruce Irvin light in terms of
I'm just not so sure.
Not great at
third time is a charm.
Not nearly as good as anything as Irvin, but does kind of have the same ability, and so
he plays special teams.
But to have him come in, I mean they're short a linebacker, and they could have another guy on the bench and play special teams and, maybe provide, 10 pass rush snaps a game or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they do like familiar faces. And quite frankly, this is a Super Bowl team. We are definitely going to be in the hunt. And so you kind of want to surround your team with solid vets that know the system that the team can trust. And he's been back with the team twice or with the team 2 different times.
Yeah, he was drafted with the team. They traded
came back for
him
a short stint last year.
And then, he came back. It was just training camp and preseason, and then he didn't make the roster, which I guess he was kind of miffed at, but whatever. We'll see. That might preclude him coming back.
All right, Keith, talk to me about Darrell Taylor.
I was just going to ask.
January 30th surgery, rod inserted into his leg, came into camp, not ready. Both not only just from a medical standpoint, but just from a physical standpoint, he just hadn't done the work that the team expected him to be able to do. And so he needed some more time. It's had more time now. Is it enough time? Where's he at?
I don't know. I have looked for...
It's pretty quiet out there.
People who are in the know to say something. And I've been searching for anything, and it's very quiet. And
which is telling.
Is it or is it not? Because when we've had this kind of issue in the past with players,
he's just going to show up on the practice report one day and that's it.
I think he might just show up. Yeah. Cause they, again, with some of the other guys, they can have him practice for a couple of weeks before they have to actually activate him onto the roster. And he might just start practicing one day. I was like, hey, guess what? He was a partial participant in practice. And you go, oh, well, that starts the clock. And
yes, right. That's right. It would shock me if nobody says anything and all of a sudden he just starts practicing. I mean, the expectation level at that point would just be almost nothing. I just would assume, based on the fact that he's a high draft pick, there's a lot of media attention around him, a lot of interest in him succeeding and wanting to come to the team because of the needs that we have at that position. To not hear a word about him is telling to me.
See, I'm more thinking, yeah, it's telling, but to me, it's telling that he might be close because the team doesn't want everyone's expectation to be that he's going to come in and save this defense. Because as a rookie who didn't get any training camp or preseason or the first 5 weeks of the season. He has yet to practice, with his professional team at all. There's not going to be, from the Seahawks standpoint, there's not going to be this expectation that he's going to come in and do much. And they don't want that to be the expectation of the fan base and the media. So I could see them intentionally keeping a lid on any and all news regarding him because it's easier on him if he's just out there doing his thing, prepping, getting the work in, getting his leg healthy.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see. How about defensive back, DJ Reed? Hearing that he might be ready or available, but in order for him to come on and actually make the active day roster, it seems like something would need to happen to Amadi.
Yeah, I mean, he is out there. It's a possibility. Honestly, with Dunbar healthy and Adams starting to, get ready and come back.
And all these guys are now starting to play together in sync. Yep.
I'm like, this is a guy that wasn't, it's not like this isn't like they're bringing in someone who used to be the starter and is, just wasn't healthy. And, this is a guy that was just out there. And
he was cut by San Francisco, but they really wanted him back, and Seattle snagged him on waivers.
Yeah, I know. But just the fact that they cut him and then all of that, like I know they're trying to keep him away from San Francisco and all of that. I mean, I'm sure they might be able to find a spot for him as a special teams guy. I mean, there are some spots to be had because you have guys that are, get injured and whatever, but they're back into the roster spots, and that's what he's going to take. I mean, this isn't a guy that's going to come in.
He would have to essentially take Nico Thorpe's spot.
Yeah.
Nico's hurt currently.
Yeah, and he's on injured reserve now.
Right. One last player. Mm-hmm. As far as reinforcements, Josh Gordon. Haven't heard a word about reinstatement.
No, we haven't.
Which is odd.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, I was looking at some stuff with him. Let me see if I can find the thing I had.
The other players, while you're looking, the other players I want to talk about briefly is Jason Myers, Michael Dixon, and Tyler Ott. I mean, those three players right there
the special teams.
are special teams Pro Bowlers at this point. Yeah. Jason Myers is perfect. Michael Dixon's putting every punt known to man inside the 5-yard line. And Tyler Ott hasn't made a single error all year. I mean, talk about a dependable trio.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want from your special team.
Crazy.
Okay, so I was looking at.
How's that for filler, everybody?
That's great filler while I was looking up. Okay, so similar situation. I mean, obviously Josh Gordon is a little more extreme, but Randy Gregory of the Dallas Cowboys applied for reinstatement in March and didn't receive his reinstatement until September. 6 months. Why did it take 6 months? Because Roger Goodell.
Well, Josh Gordon only could apply for reinstatement when he could, right? It wasn't like he could have applied in March.
But I'm just saying, and Randy Gregory couldn't apply until March, and he did, and it still took until September. It still took 6 months.
But now the league, but the difference is they're playing football right now, and Josh Gordon is being kept out of games. He's got a contract with a team. He's ready to go, but the league is the only thing standing in his way. That's, to me, I mean, anyway, I get it. I get the timing thing. It's just seems like there's some sort of bias there.
Oh,
they're wanting to punish him still.
There absolutely is. There's a, how many times has he been suspended and 8. He just doesn't really care about that particular league rule. And now it's not even a rule anymore, but he basically just kind of flaunted it. And I think the league's, trying to stick it to him a little bit, but it took 6 months for Randy Gregory to get reinstated from when he applied. Gordon didn't apply until September.
I thought it was June.
No, wait, you're right. It was in June. So that would
Okay.
make, if you follow that same pattern, you're looking at December.
And at that point, if we don't have an injury, there would be no reason to bring back Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that they wouldn't have an injury, I don't know. I look at this is the NFL. There's gonna be injuries.
Right.
It just happens.
Or if somebody's underperforming at that point. So I got one more player I totally forgot about, Colby Parkinson, tight end, with the little foot thing. It wasn't going to keep him out very long, but he started the year in IR. He's probably ready to go, given the nature of that injury. I think he broke a little toe bone in June in a workout, and he was supposed to be ready to go around September 1st.
I didn't think it was a toe. I thought it was up more mid-foot, but yeah, it was a small bone broken. Had to have surgery, but wasn't supposed to be that long. It was a thought.
And just as a reminder, everybody, this guy is like a 6'7" tight end.
Yeah, just absolutely
like
tall.
A massive red zone target guy. Pass catching tight end.
And he, like I said, he was thinking he would be ready for week 1, really tried to get back, wasn't quite ready. So they, kept him off the roster, and he's waited now his time and will be eligible to join the roster after this bye week is over. But that doesn't mean he's going to be activated right away. My guess is that he will start showing up on the practice report as participating, and they're going to use their 2 weeks to make a decision. And then when they can't delay it any longer, that Luke Wilson's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Because he's already
Luke Wilson's not playing very much at all.
You've got Will Disley and Olsen that are both playing well. Disley got, this was something that Will Disley scored a touchdown exactly 364 days after rupturing his Achilles tendon.
Wow. And it was a great one. Back of the end zone over the shoulder catch.
Absolutely.
Nice.
It was good. So
good toss too by Russell.
Yep.
There was another guy. Phil Haynes. Is Phil Haynes on IR like for the season, or does he have the ability to come off, or what's going on with Phil Haynes?
He has the ability to come off. They specifically kept him on the roster for 24 hours after, with the 53, and then cut him in order to remember the fullback / linebacker / special teams guy was cut. Nick Ballore was cut, but never left town because basically they had an agreement that they were going to cut him. They were going to bring him back. But they were doing that so that way they could get Haynes onto the roster, so they could get him onto IR, so he was available to come back.
Crazy.
And so...
Gotta love the NFL.
Well, I mean, it's no different than what they did with Geno Smith a year ago, right? They cut him.
Absolutely.
They went into week 1 with 0 quarterbacks on the roster, and then brought Geno Smith back 24 hours later because they needed to get someone onto IR. And I don't remember who it was. I just know they needed to get someone on IR. That's what they did with Haynes this year. He's out there. He's actually eligible to come off injured reserve when he's ready. They went out of their way to get him on to IR in that way because they believed he would be able to come back and play and during the season.
And he may be able to play better than Jamarco Jones or Jordan Simmons.
I don't know.
Jordan Simmons, both those guys have very low Pro Football Focus grades.
I know they have low grades, but I watch the tape and I see a big mistake here or there, but I also see play after play after play where they do their job. So
Jamarco Jones. Jamarco Jones and Jordan Simmons are 2 of the lowest graded football players on our football team. Jordan Simmons has a grade of 51.6 and Jamarco Jones has 52.6. The only other players lower are Travis Homer at 58.5, Penny Hart at 58.8, and Freddie Swain at 59.6. And then you go to the defense. Trey Flowers is the lowest player of all at 38.2.
Yeah, I don't see that with Simmons, to be honest.
I thought they filled in fine. They haven't had a tremendous amount of snaps, but the snaps they've had, it seems like they haven't caused any issues.
No, I mean that's why I don't agree with it. I watch. Yeah, there have been some big mistakes, and so you look at it and you're like, okay, I can see why.
But would Phil Haynes be an upgrade? I mean, that's the question.
How would we know? He didn't play at all last year until the playoffs, and he
didn't do well.
Yeah, well, he did okay. But he didn't play at all last year until the playoffs, missing the entire year. And then this year he has been on IR. We haven't seen him. He hasn't played. So I don't know if he would be an upgrade over those guys. To be honest, he's another guard. I could see them trading BJ Finney if they can get anything in return for him.
Yeah.
Anything. Right. Maybe you could package Finney and Hyde and get a situational pass rusher back, and then open up a spot for Haynes because, well, I mean, he is
Haynes and Penny to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have other guys coming off. They're getting these reinforcements. You got to make room for them. I don't see Finney as a guy that's going to be impactful. So if they could get rid of his contract, I'm sure they will.
So let's head out, revisiting the schedule just one more time quickly. So is there anything on this schedule now that scares you? I mean, the Bills got turned over. They didn't look really good in their last game. They looked vulnerable. The Cardinals now look vulnerable. The 49ers look
atrocious,
bad. The Rams are better than advertised. But everything else, you got the Eagles, Cardinals again, the Giants, the Jets, the Washington football team, the Rams again, the 49ers to end it. There's one or two games on here that could be competitive, and everything else should be a win.
New York, and Washington and Philly are not
the bottom of the barrel.
Teams. I mean, they are the bottom of the NFL. That's 4 games that's left. And that right there should be 9 wins with the games they've already played. And that's
not playing anything in the division.
Yeah, so it's Buffalo in the division games. And honestly, unless San Francisco starts getting healthy and really turns it around, they do not look like a good team right now. No. I mean, they got blown out by Miami. Just blown out. And to the point where Jimmy Garoppolo, they've been waiting for him to come back, got benched at halftime. And they could be in some trouble. Arizona has been, I know you're saying is not as good as advertised. They're about as good as I expected them to be. Yeah, I know they've got some talent in places, but they don't have a lot of depth. They're really a team that is going to be up and down. They're going to be hot and cold, and right now they're cold. I expect them to get hot again, in a couple of weeks and whatever. But they're going to be up and down. They're a year away. The Rams are better than
I'm confounded, honestly. They lost talent. They didn't replace it really in free agency.
Well, they traded away Cooks in a move that they're paying him, like in terms of salary cap, they're paying him more to not be on the roster than if they'd kept him, and he was probably their best receiver last year.
Yeah, and Fowler, and they just lost a bunch, and I thought that they really didn't go out and do a lot to get anything back, which is like Leonard Floyd and A'Shawn Robinson were their gets, but they lost. They just lost more than that, and they still have Goff, and he's but somehow or another he's made it all work this year.
Goff is, if you look at him, if you watch him play, if you look at his stats, he hasn't been bad. I mean, I know that
they haven't played anybody yet, though.
Yeah, I would say he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been good. I mean,
yeah, their offense is right there.
I know they are, but look at the defenses that they've played.
Yeah, no, I get it. I know. So what I'm saying is this roster sets up now. When you look at it and you look at the way that Seahawks are playing, it's set up to where we could easily win 13 wins. and have a first round bye and all the entire playoffs come through Seattle, which would be phenomenal. I mean, and my bigger thing that I'm getting to on the show in this is that you and I sat here 3 years ago, within 6 months of us, starting the show. And we were in a transition year. We didn't know it at the beginning of the year, but by the time we got into the games, we realized that we were not going to be that good. We ended up being better than we thought at 10 wins, in a year where we dumped the entire coaching staff and just, a bunch of turnover on the defense and all that kind of stuff.
Bunch of loss of talent.
We talked about this being a 3-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. This is year 3.
It is.
And we are the very team that we thought that we would be, minus maybe a little bit of talent on the defense, but nonetheless,
really, it's just
here we are. We are a Super Bowl team, and I think Pete Carroll deserves a ton of credit.
Well, and he deserves a ton of credit, because when they dumped all that talent and they let Michael Bennett go and Richard Sherman and they
etc.
And all of the all the turnover that they had, and then
plus the injuries,
losing Cam and Cliff Averill, just career-ending neck injuries and all of that,
and Earl Thomas.
Well, I was saying Earl Thomas was a year later, but he
had the injuries though.
True, and so they were playing without him, and they just went through this whole big they dumped a bunch of talent, they lost a bunch of talent to injuries, and they just. I mean, you had, Marshawn retire, and then
Brian Schottenheimer was a shitty offensive coordinator that first year.
Oh God, he was bad. But they went through all of this, and they won 10 games anyway and made the playoffs. And then last year they won 11 games in year 2 of this rebuild, knowing that they weren't done, knowing that they still had a lot of work to do. And they won 11. And then this year, it's year 3, and they're still not done. I mean, they still need a pass rusher that can come in and seriously impact games in a big way. They don't have that. But the rest of the roster, especially the offensive roster, is so good that
it might not matter.
It might not matter. I mean, this is a team that is set up.
If you look around the league too, they're not the only defense that is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they're a middle of the road defense. I don't think that they're in a bottom, 5 or 7 or whatever. There's other defenses, believe it or not, out there that are worse than Seattle. And Seattle's given up a ton of yards. I'm just saying, between the turnovers we're generating and the timely get off the fields and the all that kind of stuff, we're a little better than maybe some we'll give them credit for. And maybe everything we just talked about with players coming back, and Snack Harrison and Jamal Adams and Jordan Brooks, and a couple other pieces that have the ability to play together, get Dunbar out there. Diggs is having an okay year so far. I don't know what's going on there, but he could probably elevate his play a little bit, especially with Adams, playing with Adams. This defense has a chance to get significantly better and be in at least a top 15 type defense, combined with the lethal offense that we have. This could be a very special year.
Yeah. And that has always been the thing, right? The schedule is easy. The offense is great. The defense just has to not be terrible. And then at some points this year, they've been terrible. And the offense has been better than the defense has been bad. And
they just need to get off the field and give Russell Wilson the ball more.
Yeah. That's
my only wish. I just either do it with turnovers, and turnovers have been great. Don't get me wrong. Love the turnovers. I keep going at that rate. That's fine. It's get off the field on third down a little bit more, get that percentage down just a little bit. And I will be happy, because if you give Russell Wilson even one more opportunity per game on average, these close wins end up being blowouts. That's all I'm saying. All right. Anything else, Keith?
No.
So bye week podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week we'll be back to normal, where we talk even more. We talk about more stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
We always
and
talk.
we go into the rest of the schedule. We kind of preview the rest of the year after the bye, including the preview of the Cardinals game and whatever else comes up in the week. And find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at MW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. And SeahawksPlaybook.com has all of the shows, and find us on your favorite podcast app. So until next time, Keith, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.